Settle down. All right. So we have another question from the class. Rabbit After Dark, Sadie asks, are borderlines devoid of empathy altogether? Or are they capable of love and compassion, but just not at the expense of their need to express over the top emotional behavior? I ask this because to me, they usually seem out of control emotionally. Exactly, that's their history. That's the histrionics of the borderline, what you're talking about there. No, they're not devoid of empathy altogether. It's what they're devoid of is empathy for you. Like, the borderline has all the empathy in the world for themselves. No pets in class. Thank you. The borderline has all the empathy in the world for themselves. And whatever empathy that you think you may have received from this borderline always, always, always ends up as some way to benefit them, or is then used to be turned around against you. You see, that's where the borderline's histrionics comes from. The histrionics of the borderline comes from their empathy for themselves and only themselves. That's where it comes from. So when they're over the top in these histrionic rages and emotional outbursts, and it's all about them. So you have to understand, once you get an understanding of what drives what emotion of the narcissist or the borderline, you'll be able to call it out and see it for how pathetic it actually is. See, I keep hearing this term around the campus of empath this, empath that, empath. You know, empathy is just another emotion. It really is. And empath is something you if I've said it here once or twice, I'd be surprised. But empath is not a label you usually hear coming out of my mouth ever. It's not something I use, because to me using empath is a crutch. It's a fog, an empath, because it's not getting to the heart of the issue. Okay? Empathy isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing for us. In the real world, outside of the narcissism realm, yeah, empathy is a wonderful thing. Empathy in the world of narcissism is just another weapon, is just another tool. That's what makes all this so destructive is basic human emotions that we need to survive and to function healthy mentally are nothing more than weapons to be used against us. And that's why we struggle. That's why there's so much struggle and there's so much confusion for so long, and how you keep getting sucked in to the same situations over and over again. Empathy sucks when you're dealing in narcissism recovery, because empathy is a weapon. Empathy is what drives the borderline's over the top histrionics. All that is driven by empathy for themselves and no one else. Because if they're not getting the attention they think they deserve or they need, well, that's when the world shuts down. And then the empathy for themselves, because that vampire needs it. He needs that. That borderline vampire needs that empathy to draw you in. Needs that empathy to kick in the histrionics. The histrionics forces you closer. To come closer. The vampire, instead of you inviting them into your house, this vampire gets you to come to them by using empathy for themselves and histrionics. so they can once again suck on the lifeblood, your emotion, your future is what they need to consume to sustain themselves. So no, the borderline is not devoid of empathy at all. Empathy for themselves. Understand what empathy is. Empathy isn't just, for other people. The borderline only sees themselves in the world. They're all that matters at all times. So they're the only ones who get any empathy. Any empathy that the vampire gives to another person is only so they can draw that person in closer to them, so they can get what they want off them. It still benefits the borderline. Understand where that comes from. Understand where those histrionics come from. It comes from empathy of oneself. That's what you're seeing. I mean, and that's really what you've been seeing on the channel with these people. These have been, and in the latest case, it's been all women. These are all women who can only have empathy for themselves. That's it, class. Understand what empathy is. Understand it's that empathy that's driving the histrionics. The histrionics that draws you in closer, so then they can then feed off you. Let me in, let me in, let me in. That's what the histrionics are. Come to me, come to me. You're inviting it in. Be careful of the empathy. So, any questions from the class can be left in the comments section below. If you'd like to send in your lunch money, you know what to do with the PayPal link in the description box. And for anything else to keep the university going, you know what to do. Alrighty, everybody. Class dismissed.